Hi, this is Janos, this is my channel Real World Audio, and today I'm going to talk about stereo and mono cartridges and records. So that's because Larry of Real Hi-Fi Help, he asked me if I could say a few words about mono versus stereo cartridges and also about recording. Where do you place the microphones? Does it make a difference? And what are my favorites regarding to miking? And as I've shown you, this is an absolutely fantastic recording. Schubert's Death and the Maiden by the Juilliard String Quartet. And here I have two of them. And it's not the same because one is the mono edition and the other is the stereo edition. And when I listen to them, both are absolutely amazing. I have to tell you first that the way I listen to mono is I listen to mono on a stereo system, so that I have the LP playing, there's the mono cartridge picking up the signal, so it's a true mono cartridge but with two mono coils, so it means that it's reading double the signal basically, or I would say that it's reading the same mono information but twice, so it sends it to the left channel and right channel. So on my stereo system, the two speakers receive roughly the same information. It's not exactly the same because there's already a tiniest difference between the between the two mono voice coils, and then there's a little bit of difference in the preamp between the two channels. There's a little bit of difference between the amplifier channels, little bit of difference between the speakers, and also the room acoustics is different where one speaker sits and where the other speaker sits. So there's like a tiny differences coming through, but I like this way to listen to mono the best. And why is that? That's because I don't have to worry about having two separate systems, one for mono, one for stereo. What I'm worrying about, the only thing is I have two tone arms on my turntable, one with the dual mono cartridge and one with the stereo, and I just switch between the arms. There's a selector switch on my phono stage, so whether I use mono or stereo, I use one or the other. And even better, I don't even need to worry about these things because my mono cartridge, the Audio Technica 8033 mono, it has vertical compliance, so it means that even if I put the stereo version on it and play with the mono cartridge, it will still, sorry about the noise. Okay, so even if I put a stereo record on and read it with the mono cartridge, it will still read mono signal out of it. Why? Because stereo records are recorded with one channel cut this way, the other channel cut that way, and when the mono cartridge, it can read the information only this way. So that's the mono sum of the two channels. So basically with that cartridge I can read any records in mono even if they were cut in stereo. But you cannot do this with every cartridge because a lot of the mono cartridges, they don't have vertical compliance. And if you want to read a stereo record with a cartridge without compliance, then it will do two things. It will either damage your cartridge because the stylus is forced to jump up and down with the stereo signal, but as it has no compliance, it means that it has no shock absorbers to account for that signal, that vibration. So it means that your cartridge will break, or if it very very sturdy, then it means that it will damage your record, because either it will cut extra grooves that weren't there and destroy the stereo content, or it will be destroyed by itself. So that's why it's a great thing to have a mono cartridge. So if your preference to listen to is mono, in that case, just get a mono cartridge with vertical compliance, and then you don't have to worry about what you put on. You can put on stereo records. It will read them out as mono. And in this case, actually, I listened to them with appropriate cartridges, and also tried them out with listening to the stereo record with mono, or listening to the mono with the stereo cartridge. And here's the difference. So if I read the stereo uh, in mono, there's a little bit of a loss of information coming from mono cartridge compared to stereo. So, and that's because the the full information is encoded in 3D. It's encoded in two channels. So if you mix it down to one channel, you are going to lose some of the acoustics. It's going to be different. And then you would think that if I play the stereo record in mono, it should sound the same as the mono recording. But no, it sounds very different. And that's because of the microphone placement. So to my knowledge, RCA Living Stereo, they made these recordings with three microphones. And what they did is that for the stereo, they used the two mics on the sides, and for the mono, they used the central microphone to record. And and what I noticed with these is that the tonality on the stereo is a little better, noticeably better. I think on most audio systems you won't notice much of it, but on my system it's quite easily noticeable that the microphone placement for the stereo recording, the mics are just at a better position to pick up the instruments than the position of the mono microphone. However, if you want to simulate what the mono microphone was doing just by mixing down the two stereo mics, it won't work, because the the fine information that gives you the spatiality, if you try to jumble it down to one, it doesn't work. When you introduce processing into the signal, you are compromising the native image of the recording, and it will be a lower grade material. It will sound a little bit like those recordings that were multi-mic'd, without the advantage of the multi-miking, which is that you can pick out more details or more resolution from each of the instruments in the frequency domain. So when you have a mic that is optimized to the frequency range and the tonality of an instrument, and you place it close to the instrument, then it will get you a more realistic sonic capture of that instrument or human vocal. And that's why people think that like miking each instrument is the way to go, and certainly you get more of each instrument that way. But what you lose with multi-miking is that you lose the coherence, you lose the soundscape, you lose the image. So, and then what you will get will be up to the mastering engineer to master, to set the levels of each instruments differently. But then it will be the brainchild of that mastering engineer. What you will hear, the final image, is not a credible image. It is something totally artificially generated, and it's generated nowadays. When recordings are made in this fashion, they are generated for the uh, studio system that they are listening through it. The what's going on down there. So they are specifically adjusting the stereo image for that monitoring system in the studio. And when you listen to it in your own home system, you will find the image credible and lifelike if you have a similar system compared to the one used in the studio for monitoring. And nowadays, the overwhelming preference for home stereo and also for mastering gear in the studio is low efficiency compact loudspeakers. And when you master for these to have correct imaging, you have to blow the individual instruments completely out of proportion to sound at the right scale. And so, for example, what needs to be done is to blow the singer up, like to gargantuan proportions, to appear as a live singer when you use bookshelf speakers. So a lot of people complain that bookshelf speakers image so much better. And when I go for a ultra efficient system, let's say like an Altec Voice of the Theater, it can do almost everything right except the imaging, where it sucks because the singer is like a 10 feet tall, or maybe like a 3-4 meter tall gigantic human being there, or some instruments like the guitar is like a 5 meter long instrument. And why is that? That's not because the Altec images badly, but because it images accurately. And in during the mastering process, those instruments are blown up to epic proportions, so they will appear as lifelike through those tiny compact non-efficient loudspeakers. I would call them quiet speakers, really. So uh, going back to imaging, when you record an event with two microphones, left channel, right channel, then you record the native 3D image, and you will find that when you're listening to Altec speakers, that the native image, which is recorded here in these recordings, that's exactly right. And you have the right scale for instruments. But when you try to play this recording on a modern system with very inefficient loudspeakers, you will find that they're really tiny, or something's going on. And I cannot even hear the details as well, because they seem to disappear. It's not resolving enough, which is not the case. It's the system that's not resolving enough, cannot read out properly when it was native, when it was recorded in a native format. And when you go towards a purist system, it's not that you are going back to an age of archaic religion, because these purist guys, they are just some, like druids, like priests of a sect, some religion way long gone and they should be forgotten. No, it's because when you record with two mics alone, you are recording the native image. And I think for me, for myself, I can only think about of imaging, of real stereo imaging, reproducing the real acoustic space when the real acoustic space is on the record. When it's not on your recording, even if it's like digital, then you are not recording, not listening to the real acoustic space. You are listening to something edited. And when there's like multi-miking of instruments present, then you don't hear real acoustic space. You just hear something artificially created. And so now, more things about these recordings is that actually both sound absolutely stunning. So when I first listened to this recording, you see the cover is pretty much beat up. It looks like a pretty junky specimen, but, and you see the side, termite eaten, or actually cockroach eaten. So it's kind of like a used find, and people, someone just just tossed it out, for a Goodwill store, and after cleaning, you see I put some stickers on it, and that green sticker means ultrasonic cleaned, and when I put the S it means ultrasonic cleaned with only one record in the bath. So that's another subject. So eventually this record cleaned up extremely well and it sounds absolutely crazy, and I'm showing a trick for you guys, that if you buy such a thing in a at a record store, uh, and you just cannot expect all of the beat up used cockroach eaten copies to sound like heaven. And when you pick up like 10 copies of these, you will have 10 very different experiences. And because the record might be very little used, very heavily used, early pressing or late pressing, and talking about RCAs, it can be pressed in different plants, and not just pressed but mastered, and they have very different potential. And in this case I really lucked out, because this is a first pressing, and not just any first pressing, but the very beginning of the pressing of the first pressing series. How can I tell that? You have to read the deadwax, and when you have RCA records, then this is how to read it. I will show it, maybe you can see it. This central part where there is no music anymore, that's the deadwax. And when you look at it, it's kind of really hard to see, because you have to just shine the light at it at the proper angle. And there is maybe you can see it now, there's a series of numbers and letters, and that string of numbers and letters will end with dash, a number, and letter S. So with RCA, that's how it always works. And that number, that indicates the number of the lacquer that was used for the pressing of this record. And the lower the number is, the earlier the pressing. So and basically here I can read dash 1S. So it means this is the first pressing, the first lacquer of this run of pressing. And when you read that on an RCA, so it was there, so you go to the other side. Maybe I try to use it with one hand. So here was the deadwax information for pressing. Look at the other side. Here it will say a letter, and that letter will tell you which plant it was mastered and pressed. If you see the letter I, that's Indianapolis. And those are by far the best RCA records. And when you go, let me see where it is. So here we are pressing, and this lettering there indicates A1. So it means that it's the beginning of the first pressing. And you can see A2, that's a little later, or B1, B2, maybe C. I rarely see C. No, just B2. That's the end of the run. A1 is the beginning. So this is an A1, and it will say that here. So lacquer, is it the beginning or the end of that lacquer? And here it will, no, this is Indianapolis, and here is beginning or ending. So anyway, this is how you can find out for yourself where it was mastered, where it was pressed. Is it early pressing, late pressing, beginning of the lacquer or not? And when you find something like this, first pressing, it's always, it just sounds extremely good. The only chance when it doesn't sound extremely good, when it's been abused, and if it was destroyed by a stylus that had too much weight on it, and that too much weight cuts into the stylus and destroys high frequency information. However, if it was played properly, or it wasn't played much, then there is no destruction in it. And as you see, I got this record in Hawaii, and in Hawaii people don't listen to classical music. They buy a lot and gift it to family and friends, and they usually like put on side A, press it, play it once, and that's it. So when I go to record sales, like public radio record sale, and then over half of it is classical records, and they all are almost in the mint condition with really beat up covers. So that's it. So now I'm pushing 20 minutes. So that's all for today. I hope this helps a little bit to um, gauge the process of what mono records are, what stereo are. And when I listen to them, these both have a stereo stage. So the players are in the room, and it's not that with the stereo the players are in the room and with the mono they just squeezed up into a dot. No, both of them are real musicians in a room, but with the mono it's organized a little bit differently, but they are not crammed into one spot. It's still a total real experience. If I go out to the kitchen or I go upstairs, I can't take out any difference between the two. Both sounds like there's a group of musicians playing in the living room. So thank you, folks. Have a wonderful image or day, and thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Bye bye.